little bit of these cost flows. Let's take the brewing and fermentation stage first. How similar? We have the basic, raw materials, direct materials. We have the manufacturing overhead account. We also have our work in process account. Now the difference here is we're going to keep up with work in process for each process. We're going to have 3 processes here where costs are being added. So direct materials are being added to the beer at each stage. So what's going to happen? You have product at every stage. There's some product that's starting off in brewing. There's product that went through brewing last month that's now in fermentation. And then you got product that's done with fermentation last week that's now in packaging. So this is all going on at the same time. So all the processes are pulling in direct materials. So we'll add direct materials to our work in process. We'll add the direct labor that it incurs. We'll add that to the working process. So we got someone that's watching the brewing process that's involved in making sure the temperatures are at the right stage. So their direct labor gets added to that working process. Whereas you have somebody that is in charge of adding the yeast and checking the dates, and I guess that's the point where they start tasting it. Well, that would be the direct labor here that's going on and being added to that process. We can't forget about overhead. So yes, we have factory overhead, and then we have individual overhead items. But it's going to be applied to the working process that's, whatever method we choose. If it's simple as direct labor for the plant-wide overhead rate, or we get into something more department rate or activity-based costing, in any sense, we're going to figure out the overhead is applied to the processes as it goes along. Again, it comes out of manufacturing overhead to credit, so all the other actual overhead is being added here on the debit side. So what happens when we transfer the work from brewing to fermentation? What's going to happen? The beer is going to get done brewing, they're going to cool it down to that 54 degrees, and they're going to add the yeast. So that transfers it to fermentation process. The costs have to be transferred to the fermentation working process, following the product along. So we simply have a credit out of work in process brewing and a debit to work in process fermentation. And so what we're going to figure out, though, is what is that cost based on the amount of product that's actually transferred. So that's going to be the key we're going to have to figure out. So we complete the goods, fermentation, we're transferred to packaging, similar manner, and then finally the packaging costs, we're going to be transferred to finished goods. So what's going to all happen here in work in process packaging? We've got the direct materials, the direct labor, and applied overhead that comes to this beer during packaging. But we also have that cost that was following that beer all along from the brewing stage that was transferred to fermentation stage that was then transferred into the packaging stage. So that cost accumulates. It follows the product. And so finally we add the last bit of direct materials, direct labor, and overhead, finish it up, and transfer it to finished goods. And we get the final cost per can of beer or case of beer, or however we're measuring it. And then finally, we can figure out what's sold and recognize cost of goods sold. So once we get here, it's similar to what we've done before.